Welcome again. We begin with news of a Russian shell smashing into a two-story building in the eastern Ukrainian town of Toretsk today, killing 6 civilians who were sheltering there. The Ukrainian State Emergency Service said on Facebook that rescuers found 5 bodies in the rubble and pulled 3 people out alive, but 1 later died in hospital. The State Emergency said the town of Toretsk was under fire today, from early morning, and a 2-story building sheltering people was destroyed as a shell slammed into it. It posted photographs on its Facebook page to rescue workers digging through rubble and what was left of the devastated building, and said the search for survivors had been abandoned. Meanwhile, high-precision, long-range air-based missiles of the Russian armed forces have reportedly destroyed a depot in Odessa storing Harpoon anti-ship missiles delivered to Ukraine by NATO countries, while Ukraine's armed forces continued missile and artillery fire missions in the designated directions. Russian high-precision ground-based armament also has destroyed a launching ramp and a reloading vehicle of U.S. manufacturers HIMARS multiple rocket launching system deployed near Donetsk. Russian air defense means have destroyed an Su-25 airplane of the Ukrainian Air Forces, the Ukrainian unmanned aerial vehicle in the Kharkov region. Now, 1 Ukrainian Tojo-U ballistic missile has been intercepted in the Kherson region, and 8 projectiles launched by Ukrainian HIMARS MRLs have been intercepted as well by Kharkov region. This is also a region of Lugansk. From the Ukrainian side, the Ukrainian General Staff said Sunday that Ukraine's armed forces continue to carry out missile and artillery fire missions in the designated directions. Russian President Vladimir Putin says it will be impossible to cut Russia off from the rest of the world, and that the country must focus on developing its own technology and supporting fast-growing companies. The Russian president was addressing a video conference with government officials where he told them clearly, we cannot develop an isolation from the rest of the world, but we won't. In today's world, you can't just, circle everything with a compass and put up a fence. It's not just possible. The Russian leader has also vowed Moscow would overcome the colossal high-tech problems his country is facing as a result of sweeping Western sanctions over the war in Ukraine. In the meantime, European Union foreign ministers are meeting today as they seek to show that the bloc can maintain its financial and military support for Ukraine despite the serious inflationary impact on EU economies. And this is 5 months after Russia's invasion. The foreign ministers are likely to approve another 500 million euros of EU funding to supply arms to Ukraine, taking the bloc's security support to 2 billion euros since Russian forces invaded the country. The unprecedented scope of Western sanctions on Russia so far includes an oil embargo banning transactions with Russia's central bank, freezing its assets and halting new investments in Russia. The Russian President Vladimir Putin has reaffirmed his determination to continue what he calls the special military operation in Ukraine, despite the destruction of Ukrainian cities and deaths of thousands of people. Just before the meeting, the EU's foreign policy chief, Josep Borrell, said imposing sanctions on Russia was the right decision despite rising food and energy prices. And while Sweden and Finland move quickly to become NATO members, Austria's Chancellor Karl Nehammer has reaffirmed membership for his country, says was not up for debate. He was addressing a press conference when he made the comment. He told them, "We regained our independence and freedom in 1955. It's the only country where the Soviet troops left voluntarily, and this neutrality has since then become a part of the identity for people in Austria." Well, after Sweden and Finland joined NATO, Austria became one of 3 remaining EU countries not yet in the organization's membership, the other 2 being Ireland and Cyprus. Signing deals and opening up new opportunities is what the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has been about today. She and Azerbaijan's President Ilham Aliyev agreed to double imports of Azeri natural gas to the European Union. Under the deal, Azerbaijan will increase deliveries of natural gas to the EU from 8.1 billion cubic meters in 2021 to an expected 12 BCM in 2022.
Some European leaders have been saying that the sanctions were an error, was a mistake. Well, I don't think it was a mistake. It is what we had to do, and we will continue doing. Some people say that, for example, that the ban on oil has increased the price of oil. Well, have a look at the graph of the prices. The prices of oil, since we adopted the ban on oil, has been decreasing. So I would like people to put a figure behind any argument. When they say something, it would be good that they look for evidence, because if not, everybody can say whatever they want. The most worrisome thing is the lack of food in many countries around the world. And there is not food because Russia is blocking the export of Ukrainian grain. We are doing whatever we can in order to export this grain through other ways, through the solidarity lanes, through the Black Sea, through Romania, Bulgaria, but that's not enough. So I hope, and I think I have a hope, that this week it will be possible to reach an agreement to deblock Odessa and other Ukrainian ports.
Germany's Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock says renewable energy is freedom energy during times of war, and Russia's invasion of Ukraine acted like a booster for green power. Speaking at the so-called Pittsburgh Climate Dialogue, Baerbock of the Green Party told participants from some 40 countries the German government would lobby to intensify the development of renewable energy worldwide in cooperation with other countries. She said the climate crisis had become the biggest security problem for all people on the planet. The two-day Berlin meeting comes ahead of the November COP27 climate conference in the Egyptian Red Sea resort of Sharm el-Sheikh. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz and Egypt's President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi are expected to address the climate gathering. Well, VOA's correspondent Anna Chenikova joins us now from Kyiv on the latest in Ukraine. Hi, Anna. It's good to see you. Let's begin with the intensity of missile attacks on Ukraine. It's clear Russian forces hope to weaken the Ukrainian defense, but is it working?
Good evening. Russian forces definitely are trying to create this horror inside of the country, because they're targeting different parts of the country, different peaceful cities around the country. As we can see, it was just a huge tragedy in Kremenchuk, and then in a couple of weeks, like next week, it was a huge tragedy in Vinnytsia, which is west central part of the country. So we're talking about not only frontline, but also, about attacks around the country. And in particularly in the peaceful areas, civilian areas where a big number of civilians are accumulated. So this is kind of a strategy that Russia is using in this war, as the Ukrainian society has already, understood. I cannot say that this is something that works, because Ukrainian society just, just getting more attentive to the air raid sirens and trying, not to ignore them, because at one point in some parts of the country, like central parts especially, people were ignoring. Now it's less, but I cannot say that this is something that would, break the defense or break people's emotional situation, because people just very much, very much concentrated on keep on going and keep on living and defend the country.
And Anna, then you also hear Russia's President Putin talking down on the sanctions imposed, which is meant to isolate Russia. And he says that Russia cannot be cut off from the rest of the world. I mean, if someone were to ask, what have been the gains of this war for Ukraine, what would you say?
I think that, well, obviously for Russia, it's very difficult to imagine that they are isolated. And I think that they didn't, they were not prepared for such unity of the European countries, of the whole world, I should say, because we clearly see that civilized world and countries, a lot of countries are staying in support for Ukraine in this war, and Ukraine is also demonstrates how important all these values, European and civilized values for Ukrainians are. So of course, Russia would continue probably to play this role of a country with a big role in the world, but we can clearly see that sanctions are working, and despite the fact that sanctions are quite a long-term, have a long-term perspective, still we already can see that Russia is, according to what they say and according to their reactions to different situations at the front line, as well as in the economic sector, we can clearly see that they are not particularly happy with what's going on, and of course their president would try to keep saying that nothing is it's not important, that nothing is happening, but I think this is not quite the truth. In terms of isolating Russia, well, we can see that European countries are quite serious about isolating them in terms of oil and gas. We can see that today it was a meeting of Ursula von der Leyen with Azerbaijan leader, and a lot of other talks are also taking place. So I think that probably this is, the route for isolations anyway. And if Russia continues this kind of politics and this kind of actions, and it seems that they're not gonna, are not ready to stop and are not ready to say, okay, so, well, we're not right. So I guess this would just, increase, and Ukraine hopes that this would increase. And we hear about a new sanctions package, which also is a great sign. So we will see how it will all turn, but it looks like that civilized world and European and countries around the world, they understand that this is just cannot continue this way, that this huge impact that Russia has in terms of oil and gas in particularly should stop, because this is the weapons that they use.
I'm going to come back on, the oil and gas and the alternatives, especially for European countries. But to get your thoughts more on what the people of Ukraine are feeling at this time. We understand that the UNHCR is reporting that more than 9.1 million people have fled Ukraine since the invasion, many seeking refuge, of course, in neighboring states. But there are also reports that thousands of people have taken to public squares, Russian embassies, and this is across the globe, to protest against the invasion. Tell us what you think the Ukrainians feel about this kind of solidarity, seeing as, of course, the war continues to fester till now.
Well, as I already mentioned, this is a huge unity around the world and huge support. And of course, it's very, for Ukrainians, especially for those who remain in the country and see how their brothers and sisters around the world who had to flee the country for a certain time, how they are welcomed. Of course, it's another great support. So, because, we're not only talking about political or economic support, this emotional, bind between the countries and nations is also extremely important, and this cultural also, signs. Of course, it's extremely important. It shows real, real actions by the nation. So we understand that it's not only about politics; it's also about nations who support Ukrainian society in this war. Because of course, Ukrainians are dying protecting their country and protecting Europe. So it's definitely a great sign, and we also see how different countries around the world collect money for, let's say, Bayraktars, drones, and different other ways to support Ukraine. And this really, it's a great honor for Ukrainians to have this support. And I think this is the most important above everything else.
And Anna, while other European countries are seeking alternatives to Russian oil and gas, it almost seems like Ukraine is going through a long winter. What's the situation there, especially gas and fuel supplies for Ukrainians?
Well, it will be a very difficult winter season for Ukraine. It will be the most difficult in the last decade, what we hear from both President Zelensky and also experts of the energy sector. And Ukrainian society is informed about that and understand that they should be ready. What we know that probably the heating in the apartments and in the houses will be lower than normal, but for the moment we don't have any information that it would not going to be heating at all, because what Ukrainian government is reporting that the storages are full at the capacity it is possible to fulfill for the moment. So if there is no Russian missile reaching the storage or reaching the turbine that provide this fuel, then it should be okay for Ukraine. But again, okay means that heating will be going on, let's say, but of course Ukrainians should get ready for lower temperatures and also should be ready for alternative way to heat their homes, because in case Russian missiles would strike and heat the storages or the turbines, this could create additional problems. So for the moment, Ukraine has its own fuel, gas, for their own use. It's not completely cover the needs, but also there are European imports that Ukraine also receives. So this should be more or less okay, but it will be very difficult winter, and Ukrainian society is getting ready to that. So it's definitely, it could be more difficult if Russian strikes would be targeted particularly at these storages. But again, we will see, and I guess Ukraine government is also getting ready to this kind of circumstances.
Thank you, Anna Chernikova. Always a pleasure. Look forward to more updates, and do stay safe where you are.
Thank you.